200 feet long, and stood there. And it was beautiful, actually. That was quite beautiful to see this. It was truly a wonderful thing to behold, to see an object like that. And I knew at this point this was not from this world. We have nothing like this in our world. I've seen nothing like this. And it did a little maneuver, went up and down a little bit. It took its front and went up and then down, just to almost do a little dance, like it was almost like it was performing, which I thought was very, very interesting. My friend said to me, why don't you get out and walk under it? And I said to her, are you out of your blanking mind?
Yeah.
Why don't you walk under it? I said, we don't know what this is. It could be dangerous. I said, I'm not walking under that. So after it was hovered over the road for about 5 minutes only, it then started to move away from the road laterally due north, because this road was going east-west, west-east. It went due north. And at this part of Wyoming, by the way, just due to coincidence, this is just the way it is. When it went due north, if you went north probably 60 miles, you'd be in the vicinity of where that Devil's Tower is located. This is not meant to be joked about. That's really where this was.
Right, I understand.
So that's where this thing was headed. Any event, I waited until it was far off in the distance. I could see it up in the sky until I saw this long, it's a long rectangle, and the back of it had that little red square. I could see it off in the distance, and now it was probably 5-6 miles away. At that point, I got out, and here I am standing in the road. My girlfriend's in the car. This thing is going due north, and I felt like this could come right out of a novel. I mean, this is so cool, but I didn't have any fear. I was absolutely stunned, as you can imagine. Myself, being a scientist, my mind is racing, trying to think of what this could be. I get back in my car, and at this point, I was really in a state of shock because I don't really remember too much what I was doing. I just remember I grabbed the steering wheel. My friend was very quiet. She wasn't saying much of it. She was saying nothing, as a matter of fact. If she was, I wouldn't have heard it. And I grabbed the steering wheel tight, and I said to her, let's get out of here. So I hit the accelerator, but didn't go that fast. And, in fact, I don't even remember how fast I was going. And I'm sort of lost in my thoughts with all of this. And until I feel her shaking me. And she's absolutely hysterical, and she's shaking me. And she's saying, they're waiting for us up there. And I came out of my trance I was in, and I said, who is waiting for us? What are you talking about? And then I look off to the left side of the road, and I see this blinding white pulsating light that's off to the left side of the road, maybe about a mile ahead. And it was pulsating almost like a strobe light. And every time it pulsated, the trees would all silhouette in front of it. And when the pulse went off, it was jet black, and it was going very fast. And it was going so fast, it was frightening. That definitely frightened me a lot. And my girlfriend was screaming at the top of her lungs. She was saying things like, they're going to kill us, they're evil, we have to get out of here. So because I didn't get out and walk under the other thing, I felt I wanted to be macho. So I said to her, well, I'm going to pull over and see what's there. And she starts screaming again, and she said, if you pull over, I am going to run out this door and start running. I'm going to open the door as the car is moving and start running. So I imagine...
So she's gone from being eager for you to get up under the thing and wanting to get the dickens out of there.
No, as a matter of fact, I have never heard a woman scream that loud in my life, ever.
It's very interesting to see the way her reactions are changing as she begins to realize just how unusual this actually is.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when I met her, she was one of these, a massage therapist person, and she's very much into angels and the New Age way of thinking, and you would think that this would be sort of like, well, this is cool, it's something we never... But no, that was not the reaction. But this was frightening. When those lights were pulsating, it was definitely, unlike the rectangle over the road, this was a different thing. So I looked over to the side, and I saw the ground itself was pulsating with this light. And every time, and I did slow down to about 5 miles an hour, not to a complete stop, but came close. And I noticed that every time the light went on, there were all a bunch of beings standing around. There must have been, 10, 12, 15 of these things. And they were maybe 50 feet away. I wasn't close enough due to the light to really see details, but they were short and they looked black and very thin. And my mind was saying, get out of there fast. Yeah, so when I saw these beings on the side of the road, while the lights are pulsating white, blinding light, my girlfriend, as I mentioned, was screaming that they're going to kill us, and she just was going to run for it. And I have to admit, maybe it was a screaming that facilitated it, but I was absolutely frightened. I figured, this is not funny. These things, whatever they are at this time, unlike the rectangle, these are very frightening things, and I just want to get out of here. So, but part of me did want to stop and walk over and say hello, but I felt that part of me said, don't do that. So I accelerated the car a bit and left, and she calmed down. And then I noticed up in the sky, maybe 20 feet over my car, was a ball of light that was following my car up to right, maybe which is like 5 miles ahead, and then I went due north to Gillette, and it stayed with us for a while, then it went away. And as I looked back in my mirror at where we just were, I saw lots of activity at that site where the lights were, like things were landing and taking off. It seemed like there was an awful lot going on there. I was not about to go back and check it out, so I ended up going to Gillette. Now, this was at about 11 o'clock, as I last recall. So we ended up, as we went north to Gillette, I was absolutely just blown away by this, as you can imagine, and so was my friend. And Gillette was only maybe, probably 40 miles away, but it was a 2-lane road at which you can go 60 miles an hour at least. So it would have taken 30 minutes to get there max. And I remember arriving in Gillette with her, and I just kept saying, like in a robotic fashion, over and over, it's so late. We're never going to get a hotel this time of night. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. We're just not going to get a hotel here. And it was, and we finally did at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I sketched everything up very carefully, on my notepad, which I still have. And it didn't occur to me till months later that I saw the original thing, the rectangle. That was at about 11 at night, and it should not have taken us 3 hours to drive to Gillette. It should have taken like 20 minutes. So there's that classic missing time that people see. This experience following the entities in my apartment a few weeks before I took this trip, together with the cutouts, it all started to fit together that they were visiting me at that time, I believe, whatever they were, and this thing stopped on the road was sort of a way to introduce themselves to me. However, after I got to the Midwest and I settled into an apartment where I was writing an article about my scientific work a few months later, and I made an observation that I was doing an experiment that was very important for my career. It was a key thing in my career. It was actually an important experiment in a scientific community, and this particular experiment happened at a certain time of the year, at a certain time of the day. And I wrote down in this research report I was writing for an article for a major journal that at this particular time this experiment concluded. And I was being asked to write this report by a very famous scientist because it was a fairly substantial discovery. And suddenly I was jolted out of my awareness when I was writing this, because I wrote down the time. I said the time was this date at this time of night, and then I said, wait a minute, where have I? And that's when I said this experiment concluded at that time, which made it a successful experiment. It was something unbelievable. This experiment was so successful that it could have even happened. And then I said, wait a minute, that was exactly the same time that I saw these things in Wyoming. So this experiment I'm not going into in this interview actually started a few months before I saw those things in my apartment, and I got the solution to start this experiment in its process, sort of in a very mysterious way. I never felt that I made the discovery myself per se, that it was more or less handed to me by some insight that I didn't imagine I could have had, and the fact that this experiment concluded far from Wyoming, at exactly the same moment that I saw these things in Wyoming, to me was a very strong verification that whatever these things were, they played a role in furnishing me the solution I needed for this particular experiment, which has had a big impact in the science scene. So in my case, I feel that whatever these things are, and whatever I witnessed that night, that has had a definite interaction with me and in a very real way with a witness that was there, and it had played a big role also with the scientific discovery.
And these